All right, what if I told you there's an argument, a 2,500-year-old argument that logically proves reality might just be an illusion? Today, we are going to tackle a philosophical proof that is, honestly, as brilliant as it is terrifying. So, this is the central puzzle, right? How could a logical argument, one that, by the way, has never been definitively refuted, lead to such a wild conclusion? I mean, it sounds like some kind of philosophical prank, but believe me, it's one of the most serious challenges in the entire history of thought. Okay, so the mind behind this whole reality-bending proof, an ancient Greek sophist named Gorgias. Now, the sophists, they were basically thinkers for hire, absolute masters of rhetoric and argument. And Gorgias, he wasn't just trying to be clever here. No, he was throwing down a fundamental challenge to the very nature of philosophy itself. And what makes his argument so incredibly powerful is that it isn't based on, faith or any mystical tricks. Nope, it's just pure cold logic. It's a logical trap, a sequence of ideas that makes it so difficult to find an escape route without completely contradicting yourself. All right, so let's get into it. What is this unrefuted proof? How in the world did he build it, and why are we still talking about it 2,500 years later? The whole argument comes from his work, which was called On Non-Being. And it's just this stunning 4-part sequence. You got to see how it works. Each step is specifically designed to just methodically cut the connections between the world, our own minds, and then finally, each other. Okay, check this out. Here is how his argument builds, step by devastating step. It kicks off with the most shocking claim imaginable: nothing exists. And then, get this, even if you don't buy that, he's got you trapped with the next steps. Each one is like a safety net for the one before it. It's brilliant, really. All right, let's really unpack the logic here. I know these claims sound totally absurd on the surface, but when you take a closer look at the reasoning, you start to see just how powerful this trap really is. So, the first thing Gorgias does is drive this huge wedge right between the world and our minds. He argues that our thoughts about things aren't the actual things themselves. Now, that seems pretty obvious, right? But that simple fact creates this massive, unbridgeable gap between our inner world and the reality outside. This really gets to the core problem of knowledge. Your idea of a tree is not the tree itself. So if true knowledge means having a perfect one-to-one map in your head of the world out there, well, how can you ever be absolutely certain your map is accurate? You can't. There's always a gap. Okay, but let's just say for a second we can have some kind of real knowledge. Fine. That's when Gorgias springs the next part of his trap. He opens up a second gap, and this one is between what you know and what you can actually say about it. I mean, think about it. Your words are not your experience. When you try to explain what a sunburn feels like, you're just translating that really complex sensation into symbols, words. And that's problem number 3. You can't ever truly communicate the raw experience. And problem 4, the person hearing your words can only interpret those symbols based on their own life, their own experiences, which are different from yours, so the original feeling is never perfectly understood. So you can imagine this argument created a huge challenge for philosophy. I mean, in a lot of ways, the entire history of Western philosophy since Gorgias has just been one long attempt to build a sturdy bridge over this giant chasm that he opened up. You've got thinkers all through history wrestling with this. You have Plato, who tried to solve the problem by saying there was this higher, perfect world of forms that our minds could tap into. Then way later, you get Descartes, trying to find just one single thing he could be absolutely certain about: I think, therefore I am. And then Kant. Kant basically agreed with Gorgias's gap. He just gave it a formal name, the difference between the world as we see it and the unknowable world as it really is. And here's the thing. While all of these responses are absolutely brilliant philosophical systems, none of them have ever managed to completely and definitively shut down the core logical problems Gorgias pointed out. The gaps are still there between reality, our thoughts, and our words. So why are we even talking about this ancient thought experiment? Why does it still matter? Because this is not just some dusty old historical curiosity. Nope. It reaches right into our world today and reveals something absolutely fundamental and incredibly fragile about everything you think you know. Think about it. We go through every single day just assuming that what we see is what's really there. We assume our thoughts are a good picture of the world, and that when we talk to someone, they totally get what we mean.
Gorgias just holds up a giant mirror to all of that and shows us that those foundations are way shakier than we think.
When you boil it all down, his argument is this powerful attack on three huge pillars of our lives. First, our grasp on reality itself. Second, our claim to actually know things. And third, our ability to genuinely communicate and connect with each other. He puts all three into question. So the big takeaway is that Gorgias really forces us to confront how fragile knowledge is. Your perception isn't reality. Your thoughts aren't the thing itself. Your words are just symbols. And all of this creates these huge gaps of uncertainty. This isn't just some abstract philosophical puzzle, it's incredibly relevant today. You know, how do we deal with a world of misinformation when that link between a story and reality seems broken? Gorgias's point isn't to make us give up, but maybe to be a little more humble about what we think we know for sure.
So, in the end, Gorgias doesn't give us any easy answers. He wasn't trying to solve the problem. He was just trying to show us how deep the problem really goes. And what he left us with is this profound, powerful, and yet deeply unsettling question, one that we're all still trying to answer 2,500 years later.